Memphis Grizzlies star Jaren Jackson Jr. hosted a basketball camp last weekend, and he talked about the camp. He talked about his Grizzlies teammates, and he talked about his injury and his injury status. Now, he didn't give us the whole piece of the pie, but he gave us a little piece of it. He gave us a little piece of it, and we can break all that down and more. Cedric Coward, Jaylen Wells, all that coming up here now on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host today, Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Memphis Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies with us each and every single day. I want to make sure that you continue to make Locked On Grizzlies your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. New customers, you'll get $300 in bonus bets. You can't beat that. We got a lot to talk about in today's show of Locked On Grizzlies, and the theme of the show is going to be good news. The good news is particularly centered around the first segment, and then the second segment, third segment will be more about hypotheticals, some best case scenario situations for a couple of what I think are really important players on this Grizzlies team. But we got to get into what we know in the first segment, and I want to say we sort of got, it wasn't a huge update, so to speak, but we got a little something. We got a little something out of Jaren Jackson Jr. In terms of an injury update and his status. And I think it's enough for us to really dive in this first segment and kind of to talk about. So, again, kind of going back to what we just said, Jaren Jackson Jr. hosted his third annual basketball camp this past weekend at the Memphis Sports and Events Center. It was a really good turnout, a lot of kids there. And he had a massive support system, as well. Jaylen Wells was there from the Grizzlies. Tomasi Salo, Grizzlies head coach, made an appearance. There were some Grizzlies assistants there as well. I saw Brian Penny Collins, new assistant coach. He was in the building. And then Jaren Jackson Jr.'s parents were there as well, right? His father, Jaren Sr., his mother, Terry, was there. Some of his friends that he grew up playing basketball with. It was a big kind of love fest. Like, people who have been a big part of Jaren's journey up to this point were all there supporting him. And then, of course, I talked about it a lot in my time here. When it comes to Grizzlies players interacting with the kids and things like that, no one's better at it than Jaren Jackson Jr. Gigi Jackson gives him a run for his money. Gigi Jackson, he has that big bubbly personality too that the kids just gravitate to instantly. But Jaren Jackson Jr., the way he engages with the kids, with the Memphis community, it's very unique. And that's why, the way that he is kind of viewed as an ambassador, not just for the NBA, but for the Grizzlies, for the city of Memphis. It's well-deserved recognition for what he does. But Jaren hosted this camp, great turnout, wonderful time. I spent about a couple hours there, and got to see Jaren interacting with the kids. Got to see the kids doing some drills and things like that. And before we kind of get into the injury status, just another thing that really stood out to me, and it's kind of strange hearing it still. Jaren calls Memphis home. And I don't think some people really know that or understand that, what I mean by that, because some people are like, well, duh, he's been playing here. But you talk to his parents, you talk to Jaren, like, this is home for him. Jaren has not lived anywhere longer than he's been in Memphis. He came to Memphis, as a teenager, right? He was an 18-year-old kid when he was drafted, played his 19-year age season, his rookie season with the Grizzlies. And yesterday, his birthday was on yesterday. I believe Jaren turned 26 years of age. So he's 26 now. And you're talking about pretty much 8 years, in this city. And it's like, he's been here longer than anywhere. Jaren spent a lot of time in different places, different states. But this is a place where he spent his most time, and Memphis has become special because of that. But we got to get into these injury updates. That's what everybody wants to talk about. That's what everybody's waiting on at this point. But I saw, Jaren at his camp, and I asked him. Now, Jaren's veteran. He's a little savvy. He ain't just gonna straight up tell you like, "Hey, I'm coming back on this day. Get ready." Like, no, Jaren, he's gonna wiggle his way around. But you gotta understand the context. And Jaren Jackson Jr. When I asked him pretty much about, his injury status, the first thing that he said was, "I'm feeling good. I'm progressing the right way. I'm doing what I need to do. Every day has been a building block." Now let's start with that, because what you see there is, yeah, it's a surface level, generic, whatever type of quote. But he says, "I'm progressing the right way. I'm doing what I need to do. Every day has been a building block." And then, he goes on into the second part of the quote. After I asked him another question, he says, "I'm aiming for whatever my body is telling me, but I'm progressing the right way." He said that again. "I'm progressing the right way." And then at the end, he says, "I think everybody is going to be happy." Now let's break those up a little bit. He said twice that he's progressing the right way. I think that is huge. Some people say, "Oh, well, that's just news within the news." Jaren Jackson Jr. progressing the right way means that things are going well, or it's going as planned, because as we've talked about in the past, as of today, September 16th, right? And when the Grizzlies in late July issued the timeline reference for when Jaren Jackson Jr. should be reevaluated, it was roughly a week or so from now. Roughly a week or so from now. So if he's progressing as he should be, and everything is going to plan, that means we are probably a week or so out from the Grizzlies giving us a firm update on where Jaren Jackson Jr. is, and what's the next steps. That's huge to me, because if he was behind schedule, which we've seen happen with some Grizzlies players from time to time. I mean, we saw it happen a couple times last season. But if he's ahead of schedule, whatever the case may be, the fact that Jaren Swear he's progressing the right way, I think that's great news. I think that puts us in line to get a more firm update here really soon on what's going to happen next. And that kind of aligns with what I've been hearing as well. It's always best to hear straight from the horse's mouth, as people like to say. But yeah, regarding Jaren, like when I talk to people kind of who would know a little bit just about, his injury status, I've heard about him working out, right? And he's looked good, in those workouts. There are some limitations still and whatnot. And of course, there's some limitations still at this point. Like, that's nothing really surprising to anyone out there. But from what I've heard, like, there haven't been really any setbacks or anything like that. So that's that on the Jaren news. But then at the end of his quote, he says, "I think everybody is going to be happy." Now, why would he say that? Why would Jaren Jackson Jr. say, "I think everybody's going to be happy"? Pretty easy to me, because what would make everyone not happy? If this injury carries over into the regular season and we're saying, "Oh, when is Jaren Jackson Jr. going to return?" That's what will make everyone not happy. So if he says, "I think everybody is going to be happy," what does that mean? Because to give you more context, because I straight up asked, I said, "Are you trying to be back by the start of the season?" And that's when he said, "I'm aiming for whatever my body is telling me. I'm progressing the right way. I think everybody is going to be happy." I think Jaren Jackson Jr. is trying to be back by the start of the season. I don't know this for certain. And, as we're a couple weeks from training camp at this point. And of course, we'll get more, I guess, we'll get more concrete, is the word probably, information on Jaren's status or whatever the case may be. But what I got from that, he's aiming to be here. He's aiming to be ready. And that shifts things. Jaren Jackson Jr. is back at the start of the season. All this, Santi potentially starting the season, at power forward, and the Grizzlies having to figure out who's going to play this small ball forward role, and maybe Olivier, Maxime Prosper getting some potential minutes because the power forward depth is, all of that goes out of the window. All of it. You got Jaren Jackson Jr., you got Santi Dama. They get all your minutes at the 4th spot. Simple and easy. Two really good NBA power forwards proven power forwards at this level. They get all the minutes. Simple. So even if Jaren Jackson Jr. is on somewhat a minutes restriction, he plays 24 minutes. Well, guess what? You got Santi Aldama who could play the other 24 at the 4. Easy work. So Jaren's status, I think it is good news. Again, I saw him moving around. We've all seen him kind of moving around a little bit lately. He's been kind of showing his face around. He was at a Memphis football game, recently and things like that. So, again, talking to people, Jaren seems to be doing well. Listen to the words straight out of Jaren's mouth. He said, I'm progressing the right way. He's progressing the right way. Things are going well. We'll get more updates as time goes on, but it seems like right now Jaren Jackson Jr. is on the right track. I know that's kind of been a talking point as we've talked about the idea of Jaren Jackson Jr. and Zach Edey. When will they be back? How will they be back? What will the Grizzlies look like until they're back? It seems like, we talked about potentially the Grizzlies starting lineup missing 2 starters at the start of the season. We might need to start thinking about the fact that only one possibly will be missing at the start of the season, and that's Zach Edey. But coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies, we got to talk about some other players, right? That's the good news with Jaren Jackson Jr. We haven't really heard much, quote unquote, good news with the next guy that we're going to talk about, but there's a lot of potential good news on his front as well. So stay tuned for that coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we get to that, today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by none other than 5 Hour Energy Drink. I don't know if you've heard yet, but caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5 Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. Look, what I love about it most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. Enough with the boring, flavorless caffeine. Man, get out of here. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in store and online at www.5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. Again, that's www.5hourenergy.com or head over to Amazon today. Coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies, let's talk Cedric Coward. Coming up next. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, and we started the show talking about an established Grizzlies veteran, right? Jaren Jackson Jr. and some potential good news on the injury front with him, but Cedric Coward, not to bear the lead here. I don't have much. I know that's been a big question everybody's been asking, and trust me, when I know, you guys will know. But I haven't really heard much information on Cedric Coward. Nothing, I guess, that I would like to report on, so to speak. But I haven't heard anything bad either. But with all that being said, from a hypothetical standpoint, like we just talked about Jaren Jackson Jr., good news. What would be good news this season in terms of Cedric Coward? And as I was thinking about this, three things really stood out to me when we talk about the fact that what would be good news on the Cedric Coward front. Number one is simple, and number one is easy for me, and it should be easy for many of you as well. And number one is a healthy season. Cedric Coward needs to be available. He needs to be healthy. He needs to trust his body. The Grizzlies need to trust his body. And if he's healthy, he'll be available. If he's available, he's going to get some chances to play. And that's the floor. That's the basis. You got to get out there on the floor. I know a lot of Grizzlies fans wanted to see him in Summer League. I know he wanted to play in Summer League, but the restrictions were the restrictions. So number one is health. We want to see Cedric Coward get out there being healthy. We want to see him out there playing, and we want to see what he can bring to the table, because there's kind of like a mystique to Cedric Coward right now. Like you've seen this small sample size of games, his final season in college at Washington State, and what he could do, in that little stretch. And then you hear about what he could do, the workouts, the Grizzlies players telling me how hard he's attacking the weight room and things like that. But you haven't seen him in that Grizzlies uniform get up some jumpers yet. Like, we haven't seen that. So there's kind of like this, this Bigfoot type mystique with Cedric Coward right now. But it's gonna come. We're gonna get the real. We're gonna see the real soon here. But other than a healthy season, the next thing for me, when you talk about what would be good news for Cedric Coward and the Memphis Grizzlies, and that's beyond a healthy season, that's becoming a top rookie in the NBA. And when I say top tier rookie, being one of the 7 or 8 best in a typical year gets you that, depending on how strong the draft class. But the point that I'm making is he needs to be a rookie that the Grizzlies look at and see and say, we got us one. They need Cedric Coward to be that for a variety of reasons. Number one, the investment. He's always going to be tied into this trade, right? The trade is, the Grizzlies traded away Desmond Bane. Yes, you got Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in that trade. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is the veteran. He's supposed to come in and make an immediate impact with the Grizzlies. But come on now. We all know the biggest draw to that trade was the draft capital, the draft assets that the Grizzlies gained in the process. And the first pick that we saw used with those draft assets, yes, it was traded up. So, the pick they traded up. But the first one that we saw get put to use with these draft assets was Cedric Coward. Cedric Coward. So the number one question is he's always going to be tied to Desmond Bane in that point. And that gets me to the next thing. And the last thing that I wanted to point out is you want to leave this season feeling like Cedric Coward can be a core player for the Grizzlies. I know it's just his rookie year. It's a lot to throw at a rookie. But guess what? You know what else is a lot to throw at a rookie? You trade up in the draft. You go get him. And they like him. It's no secret. I can tell you this. This is me. Based on what I've heard talking to people with the Grizzlies, they love Cedric Coward. They love him. They wanted someone who could play defense. They wanted someone who could shoot the basketball. They wanted someone who could score the basketball. They believe that this guy, Cedric Coward, can do all of those things. If he does all of those things, he becomes a core player. And when I say core player, I'm not talking about someone that the Grizzlies are just excited about and say, hey, we can keep him around. I'm talking about a player who you can keep around and say, hey, this is the player we want playing alongside of Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr. en route to a potential championship. If you don't feel like this player can play alongside of Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. en route to a championship, then what are we talking about? Because that's the goal now. This was established when the Grizzlies traded Desmond Bane. That trade was not about making the Grizzlies be a team that's just going to be fine with, hey, 50 wins for the next 10 years and, let's just be known as a winning regular season team. No. Quite frankly, they could have kept doing that, just kept Desmond Bane and changed some pieces around those guys, and they could have kept doing that. This is about going to win a championship. This is about winning a championship. You got Ja Morant, you got Jaren Jackson Jr. You have said on the record, you have said publicly, that's our core guys. Those are the guys we want to build around. Okay, so you're building around them. What the Grizzlies have also said publicly is we want dogs. That's what Zach Kleiman said. We have a better understanding of what this fan base responds to, what type of players, those gritty players, and then what did they do in this draft? They went go get straight defensive guys. And then what have I said on this show time and time and again? Remember the last NBA champions we just saw in June? Oklahoma City Thunder. Remember the champions that we saw the year before that? The Boston Celtics. What has really stood out about those two champions in particular, the last two champions we've seen in the NBA, go look up and down the starting lineup. With Boston, you had Derek White, Drew Holiday, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. 4 outstanding defenders. Outstanding defenders. Go to OKC. Shai Gilgeous, Lou Dort, Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams. You got Alex Caruso, Cason Wallace. You get what I'm saying? You get the point that I'm making? The Grizzlies have kind of got to a point where it's, hey, we have to be a team where we put out there stout defender after stout defender after stout defender so we can be able to compete for a championship. That's why John Morant, Desmond Bane, as talented, as prolific as an offensive backcourt there was, couldn't keep them both because there is a defensive limit to what they could be. You just couldn't be an outstanding perimeter defense with both of those guys being in the line. That was the conclusion that the Grizzlies came to. That's why you go get Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. That's why in this segment we're talking about Cedric Coward. That's why you go get Cedric Coward, because you got now from a long-term standpoint, you got John Morant, you got Jaren Jackson Jr., you got Zach Edey at center. We talked about the big man a couple episodes ago. If Cedric Coward becomes a core player with what we've seen from Jaylen Wells, you got a starting five for the future. And not just that, you got 6'7" Jaylen Wells. You got a 6'8" guy in Cedric Coward with this massive wingspan that's over 7 feet. You got Jaren Jackson Jr., you got Zach Edey, you got size all over the floor around John Morant. Everything else, switch it. That's what OKC did. So Boston did. It's the championship formula right now. Having those switchable wings who can guard multiple positions, who can guard the point of attack, who can go in the paint and get their hands dirty, get their feet dirty, whatever they got to do to bang with the big boys, they can do that too. That is a women's formula. And the Grizzlies, Cedric Coward right now gives them the best chance at that. G.D. Jackson gives you a really good chance too. But Cedric Coward, his makeup, his ability as a three-point shooter, what we've seen on film, he's a little bit ahead in that area than what G.G. is. G.G. is a natural scorer. G.G. a bucket getter. Cedric Coward ain't got that wiggle that G.G. Jackson has. But again, you don't need that as much. He has a higher defensive profile. He has the long arms. He has the willingness. He wants to be that rugged defender. It's those two guys. But again, when you talk about what else is in that lineup, you got John Morant, you got Jaren Jackson Jr., you got Zach Edey. Zach Edey's going to be dominating on the glass for years to come. Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to continue to be a defensive force. John Morant's going to continue to be a strong closer. He's going to be a terrific facilitator. You know what you got in Jaylen Wells. You need that other position figured out. That position has been the thorn in the Memphis Grizzlies franchise since Rudy Gay was traded. Ever since Rudy Gay was traded, the Grizzlies have not found a long-term answer at the 3 spot. We've seen so many different players come in there, so many different ones, but there has not been one long-term answer. So here's the hoping that Cedric Coward could bring the good news for the Memphis Grizzlies. Another guy that could bring some good news for the Memphis Grizzlies is Jaylen Wells. Saw him at Jaren Jackson Jr.'s camp, caught up with him a little bit, but also just from a basketball standpoint, that is another guy that the Grizzlies would like to see more from this upcoming season. We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we get to that, today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Listen up. FanDuel is terrific in all these different ways. I like to use same-game parlays. Sometimes when you use same-game parlays, you get profit boosts and things like that even help you win more than you plan on winning based on the odds of a bet. Make sure you go take advantage of that over at FanDuel. So are you ready to play? Because if you're not ready to play, download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. If you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now and go over to FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet and take advantage of that opportunity. So make sure you go take advantage of that now over at FanDuel.com. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, where we talked about pretty much the entire Grizzlies starting lineup in recent days. We talked about, Jaren Jackson Jr. and John Morant as this terrific duo. We've talked about, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, what you need to see from him. We talked about Zach Edey, right, taking that second-year jump, so to speak. And at least one guy. And we talked about this guy some as well. But the theme of today's show, based off of the conversations with Jaren Jackson Jr., the theme of today's show is good news. Spreading the good news. And as it pertains to Jaylen Wells, here's the thing. Jaylen Wells had a terrific rookie year. A better rookie year than many people could have imagined. Even the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies will be the first ones to tell you. They didn't plan on Jaylen Wells being a starter. They thought he was going to spend part of the season with the hustle. The idea was, let's bring this young guy in, move him along, go play some minutes down there with the hustle, work your way up, come back with the Grizzlies, get an opportunity. Let's see what we got out of him. That was the plan. But everything don't go as planned in the NBA. And Jaylen Wells got an opportunity because Marcus Smart got hurt, and he never relinquished it. He got that starting opportunity, and it was wraps. As the young kids say, it was GG's. He got an opportunity. He ran with it, and that was it. Jaylen Wells, terrific rookie year, right? We've talked about the highs. We talked about the lows. This segment is not about any of that. We're not going to talk about, the things that we talked about from the standpoint of his 3-point percentages and all the things you want to see and all the things you're hoping to see, or whatever the case may be. But when I think of Jaylen Wells and I think of what a second-year jump looks like for him, it's a tough question. It's a tough question for me to answer, and I'm intrigued what it looks like for you guys as well. But when I think of a second-year jump for Jaylen Wells, the reason it is tough for me, and I said this in the previous episode as well, but the reason that it's tough for me when we talk about a second-year jump for Jaylen Wells is because his ceiling, to me, looks a little bit different than that of a Zach Edey, than that of a G.G. Jackson, than that of a Cedric Coward. Jaylen Wells is a player who I don't really see as a high ceiling type of guy. He's one of those high floor players. I'm very comfortable saying he can have a long NBA career. He can have a very long NBA career. But all-star and things like that, like you can look at G.G. Jackson and say, man, if he absolutely maxes out his potential, that's a great NBA scorer right there. Or if Cedric Coward, right, becomes, this great two-way guy, he could be an all-star, right? But I don't see that with Jaylen Wells. And that's fine, because what you want to see in Jaylen Wells is a guy who could be one of the best in his role. And that is definitely not out the question. He could definitely be one of the best 3-and-D wings in the NBA for a plethora of reasons. But what does that second-year jump look like for me without the caveat of him becoming this all-star player? Because that's not what I'm projecting when I say second-year jump for Jaylen Wells. A couple things stand out to me. And one, let's get into the defensive end, because that's what he's good at, right? That's kind of where he made kind of his mark and he initially stood out, was on the defensive end. And to me, I want to see Jaylen Wells get better against the bigger wings. We've talked about that, right? He struggled against Luka, struggled against LeBron. He struggled at times when those bigger, more physically imposing wings would be going up against Jaylen Wells. He had his way in matchups with guys like Damian Lillard. I know he played James Harden a couple times. The first matchup, he got the best of James Harden. The next matchup, I think James Harden fared a little bit better. But the point that I'm making is Jaylen Wells put on some weight. He's told me this, and he's been planning to get stronger all over the course of all season to be able to handle those matchups better. And that's something that's important to point out, because we've done all this talking about, early in all season, all this conversation about the Grizzlies getting another wing, right? Getting another wing. And they did just that by going to get Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. But I think when most people thought getting another wing for the Grizzlies, they thought someone who would be guarding the threes a little bit more. And from a size standpoint, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Jaylen Wells are pretty interchangeable. They're both two guys who play, a lot of two guard in their career, natural two guards, I would say. So with that being the case, the Grizzlies are hoping at some point that Jaylen Wells slides over to the two, and then you have the guys like the G.G. Jacksons, the Cedric Cowards, and whatnot, who could be the threes. But for now, Jaylen Wells is going to have to guard those bigger dudes. Just is what it is. when they play the Lakers, he's going to have to get LeBron or Luka. He's going to have to guard one of them. He's going to have to do a really good job at it, because if you don't do a really good job at guarding one of those guys, probably going to lose. The other thing that I want to see is a simple one, but one that I've kind of harped on a little bit, is I want to see some type of go-to presence for Jaylen Wells. And what I mean by that, and go-to presence on the offensive end, let me clarify there. What I mean by that is I want to see something in his game become very routine, become his bread and butter on the offensive end, other than just standing, waiting on the ball, catch it, shoot it, go back on the other end. That's NBA players do that all the time. Everybody in the NBA at some point has learned how to space the floor. And I mean, doesn't mean they're good at it, but they understand the concept of someone else has the ball, you space the floor, you kick to the corner, whatever the case may be. You wait on the ball, your man, goes to help somewhere, you catch it, you shoot it, boom. Simple NBA, simple basketball, period, one-on-one. But what else does Jaylen Wells bring to the table? We've heard about his mid-range game. We've seen it in little pieces. I want to see some more of that. Pump fake a three-pointer, let guy fly by you, one dribble, two dribble, mid-range pull-up, money. That's a nice go-to move. What about something like playing in the pick and roll? We probably don't see it much because you got John Morant out there, and then when Ja's out of the game, you're gonna have Scottie Pippen Jr. and Ty Jerome. So maybe he just doesn't get much opportunity to do that, but I want to see some of it. I want to see an expanded role in some way, shape, or form, because if he's playing the same role this last season, that limits how much of a second-year jump Jaylen Wells could take. Remember, if we're talking jumps aren't necessarily just a player being better than they were the previous season. It's the role improving. It's a guy going from 10% usage to 15% usage, or whatever the case may be. It's a guy basically going from, hey, this season he stood in the corner and was in the background, and now, okay, let's get him, running a couple pick and rolls. Let's see what else he has in his game. And for Jaylen Wells, it doesn't have to just be, pick and roll. It doesn't have to just be a two dribble or one dribble pull up, whatever the case may be. It could be something. Well, it could be him crashing the glass. It could be like we talked about Christian Brown in a recent episode. Guess what? He didn't start getting the ball much more with Denver, but what he started doing was running the floor, and he eventually came known as one of the best transition scorers in the NBA, because Nikola Jokic would get that rebound and he would fling the ball ahead to Christian Brown, because he knew he was going to go to the basket and he was going to get some shots and he was going to finish at the basket. So that's what I want to see from Jaylen Wells. Just a little bit of that, because Jaylen Wells got some game, man. And we saw a little bit of that summer league when they gave him an expanded role. But it's interesting to me because I've never thought of him as a high ceiling player. But this season will really give us a really good look at what his ceiling could be. Jaylen Wells is as a player. The Locked On NBA Top 100 is here. Jaylen Wells was just outside of the top 100, by the way, but it's voted on by the NBA hosts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Our top 100 was formed by experts that cover these teams and players every day. Find the full list on Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Don't miss all the reactions to where every player and where players on the Grizzlies, where players on other teams landed as well. We talked a lot about this. We talked about the best of the rest. We broke down the list, but make sure you continue to check that out as well. Make sure you continue to check out Locked On Grizzlies. Me and Joe Monax will be back with you relatively soon here. Continue to talk all things Memphis Grizzlies. We're only a couple weeks away, y'all. Stick in there with us as we get to the meat of the content coming up here in the next couple of weeks. But until then, appreciate you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies. Remember, Locked On Grizzlies is free and available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify. And make sure you continue to tune in to Locked On Grizzlies. I'm Damichael Cole, and we'll see you on Locked On Grizzlies.